Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 3 by Senator Leno, an act relating to wages.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm pleased to present this bill, which is jointly authored by my colleague, Senator Connie Leyva, who is going to make the closing statements for the presentation of this bill. The President of the United States has defined income inequality as the defining challenge of our time. Wages are growing at the slowest rate relative to corporate profits in the history of the United States of America. Median wage has been stagnant for 30 years. 65% of Californians are living paycheck to paycheck. 8 million Californians earning the minimum wage are living below the federal poverty line. And as a result, California has the highest rate of poverty in the entire nation. We must do more to address this, and we can. This bill would raise California's minimum wage, which is currently at $9 an hour, projected to go to $10 by statute January 1st of next year. This bill would raise it to $11 an hour, January 1st of 2016, and then 18 months later, raise it to $13 an hour, July 1st of 2017, and 18 months after that, we would adjust it for consumer price index going forward. And why we strive to get to $13 an hour by July 1st of 2017 is because at that point, at approximately $26,000 a year, we would get our minimum wage earners just above the federal poverty line. A federal poverty line that is very conservative in that it does not even include a line item for the cost of child care, which is one of the greatest costs of any working family, and it does not reflect that the cost of living here in California is 30% higher than across the country. We know that the economy is 70% based on consumer spending. That means when we pay our middle class and working class so little that they haven't enough to spend, the entire economy suffers. So by putting those earning the least with a little more money in their pockets to spend, this is not going to go off to some Swiss account. It's going to be spent immediately to meet daily needs in our local communities. So this is an economic driver. That means with an increase in the minimum wage, we'll have more consumer spending, more demand for goods and services. When there's a greater demand for goods or services, that's when employers hire, and we create a virtuous cycle upwards. Interesting to note that there are thought leaders on the conservative right, such as Bill O'Reilly and Mitt Romney and Ron Unz, who support increasing the minimum wage for a particular reason. They think, as do I, that it's wrong that we taxpayers subsidize the basic daily needs of low-wage earners, their housing, their nutritional needs, their medical care. We taxpayers subsidize employers who pay sub-poverty wages because they, by definition, qualify for public assistance. And that's what's happening right now. We all are subsidizing the wealthiest family on earth, the Walton family, collectively worth over $100 billion. You and I are subsidizing their workers' housing, food, and health care needs because they all qualify for public assistance. There are traditionally, as we debate increasing the minimum wage, predictions that the sky will fall and our economy will tank. In fact, study after study show otherwise, and I know that there are studies that we could debate that show the opposite of that. But if we look close to home, what has happened here in California since July 1st, 2014, when we raised our minimum wage from $8 an hour to $9 an hour, with the statutory requirement that we raise it another $1 per hour January of 2016. Since we took that action, California's unemployment rate has fallen and fallen dramatically, from 7.5% down to 6.3%, the lowest that we have been since before the crash of 2008. And we see across the country, in cities and states that have the highest minimum wage, that they've got the greatest rate of employment growth. Now you kind of scratch your head and ask yourselves, well, how does that happen? How that happens is that because of a higher minimum wage, there's greater productivity, employees are retained because they're more satisfied in their job situation, and with a slight, in fact, in the case of McDonald's, the estimates were by a couple pennies, prices are raised, and as a result of the worker retention and the greater productivity, not only do we not see massive firings, but we actually see job growth because there's more money spent as a result of the higher minimum wage. So I'll just close by saying that it is time that we make it illegal to pay sub-poverty wages in California. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Leno. We'll now move to Senator Stone.
Thank you. Mr. President and fellow members, I respectfully disagree with my colleague from San Francisco. I think if anyone believes that our decreased unemployment numbers are a nexus to a higher minimum wage, I think it's totally disingenuous. I think we can all agree, though, that poverty in the state of California is a real and serious issue that must be addressed. Unfortunately, SB 3 does not accomplish this goal. I personally don't like even the term minimum wage. I think we should call it a starting wage. And even getting to $13 an hour will still have people living in poverty, will still have people getting CalFresh, getting welfare. We're not pulling anybody out of welfare, which should be, I hope, a collective goal of this body is to lift people out of poverty by giving them more skills, giving them more education, and giving them the tools to succeed. According to the Employment Policy Institute, empirical research has found no link between a higher minimum wage and economic growth. A recent report by the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office finds that an increase in the minimum wage hurts the economy by causing job losses. According to the CBO, raising the federal minimum wage just to $10.10 per hour would cost the economy 500,000 jobs by 2016. A study published in January by the Jonathan Meir from Texas A&M and Jeremy West from MIT, not small-time universities by any means, found that increasing the minimum wage actually reduces the number of jobs available. Higher minimum wages lead to lower job rates of growth. Indeed, a 10% increase in the minimum wage causes roughly a 0.5 percentage point in the reduction of job growth, a very large effect. I would say of the many issues that we face here on the floor, this one bill has probably garnered more attention, with the exception of the immunization bill, than any others. I heard from our restaurateurs, I heard from our hospitality industry in the Coachella Valley, where tourism is prevalent, in the wine country in Temecula, that increasing this minimum wage is going to put a damper on their ability to maintain and hire more employees. Joseph Sabia from San Diego State University echoed the same conclusion in his articles that summarized the study he conducted recently in September of 2013 that found that minimum wage increases are likely to hurt low-skilled workers as the increases eliminate these jobs first. The fact is that a summary of the last 2 decades of research from economists from the University of California, Irvine, where I proudly call my alma mater for 2 years, and the Federal Reserve Board found that 85% of the most credible studies on minimum wage point to job loss for less skilled employees, which I would hope that this body is trying to help. Let's work together to find real solutions to create jobs and lift people out of poverty, not kill jobs like this measure will unfortunately do and time will prove these scholars correct. I strongly urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Berryhill, who will be followed by Senator Hertzberg, Senator Morlock, and I believe Senator Leyva is going to close.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I also rise in opposition to this bill. You know, I think maybe we should just quit goofing around with $1. Why don't we go to $20 or $30 an hour? Think what that would do to our economic vitality here in California. Listen, this bill and minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. It's a startup wage for kids. This bill might as well be known as a Job Reduction Act for high school kids. You know, my dad and grandfather ran a dehydrator for 40 years, and they hired all the kids in my high school, well, not all the kids, but 60 kids that wanted to work. And then in the 60s, when they came up with the original minimum wage, which was about $1.35 an hour, as soon as those kids figured out that they didn't have to produce anything to get that $1.35, the productivity went to nothing. And it was a short 2 years later, you know, that operation went upside down. What happened with that? Well, you had 60 immediate jobs that were lost. Now, what are those kids doing? They're out in the street getting in trouble. This was made for McDonald's, for Burger Kings, for kids to get involved with their first jobs. What this does is keep people from doing that, or businesses from doing that. So as well-intentioned as this bill is, and it is well-intentioned, I think it goes, you know, in the face of productivity throughout this state, and I don't think it's the right time or the right bill to do this. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Berryhill. Senator Hertzberg?
Thank you so much, Mr. President, members. I wasn't planning on speaking on this, and I have no notes. So it's going to take a long time. Let me tell you, at the core of who we honor work. We honor work. Are there exceptions with respect to kids, as Senator Berryhill appropriately notes? Of course. But we honor work. And what happens with a worker versus the cost of buying a tire or buying something else? What happens is you're able to negotiate with them in a way where they can value their work less than what it should be. What's really happening? What's really happening in our society, and Senator Berryhill referenced it, and maybe this is the right debate to have. But the question we ask is, what does it cost to have a subsistence life? How many square feet do you need? How many calories do you need? And what does that cost? And then how many hours do we deem appropriate to work? You know, is it working 120 hours a week? Is that what it takes? It takes 3 jobs? What does it take? Once we set those moral standards of society that was very different throughout our human history, we now back into that number. Because what is really happening is somebody gets a job, and they get on a tax-subsidized bus, and they go to work, and they have their kids in a tax-subsidized childcare, and then they go home to tax-subsidized housing, and then they get food, as you say, from CalFresh on a tax-subsidized manner, and then we give them an earned income tax credit. Are we really telling the truth about our economy? Are we telling the truth about what it really means to work and to honor work, about what society is? Are we properly economically pricing the cost of items? And are we really, as Senator Leno indicates, simply subsidizing certain businesses? And it goes way beyond what our society is about. We have to tell the truth. And the minimum wage is a place where you get to the core essence of who we are as a society in honoring work. And I would suggest, as we move forward in this body, that this is one of many steps that we need to take to really begin to analyze that question on a proper economic basis. Because there is not honor in going out and you're working hard and then you got to go beg for all these other support. When you get out there and you get a job, you should have enough money to feed your family. You should have enough money to put a roof over your head in decent conditions. We talk about it in a number of different manners and different issues and different committees. But at the end of the day, it boils down to that question. And so I stand here in support of this measure today, and will continue throughout the years to work on this larger economic issue about what kind of society we have, and about to properly support folks in a way that gives them honor to the work that they do. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Hertzberg. Senator Morlock?
This ought to be a fun debate. I'll wave my glasses too. The debate is, what kind of society are we running? I love it. I love it, Senator from Los Angeles. But it's a capitalistic society. And we need to honor work. We need to honor the work of those that are creating the jobs, that are paying the taxes, that allow us to subsidize the transportation and everything else. And it's the risk takers, it's the small business people that have to figure out and do the quantifying and the analysis. And they sit down and they say, how much is it going to cost to do the job of running this small business, whether they're a franchisee or starting their own professional business? They've got to sit down and say, what am I going to have to pay for rent? And what am I paying for utilities? And what am I paying for all the other expenses? And then what am I paying for payroll taxes, unemployment insurance, workers' comp, benefits, all the rest? All that math has to be done by someone who's going to take it in the shorts, and they have to subsidize pay increases. It affects the owner's take-home pay, or that owner has to reduce his workforce or cut something because rent is fixed. And all the other, I'm thinking of the smaller businesses like my son worked for a Cold Stone. And you sit there and you say, okay, you sit in the shop and you kind of analyze, how is this owner making it, and is it really worthwhile to do? And if we don't make it worthwhile to do, then we are going to lose a lot of jobs. I had a lot of fun discussion just last night with a young man, and he said, Dad, McDonald's, which was mentioned a couple of times already, McDonald's is already using technology. You go ahead and place your order technologically with a text or however you want to do it, and you can remove a few order takers and focus on cooks as opposed to a whole front line of people standing there taking orders. If their order's already in electronically, boom, your food's waiting for you when you walk in. You can remove a lot of employees. I was surprised this morning when the hotel said, hey, if you don't want maid service, you get extra points on your hotel card. Well, great. I'm only here for a few nights. So I can eliminate a maid. So people are looking at ways to cut and ways to remove employees, and I think we need to be careful. I think we got to be real careful with the minimum wage increase. You're attacking business people that are subsidizing this state and this nation, and I encourage a no vote, and I thank you for the fun debate.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to respond to the notion that minimum wage jobs are just for kids. In fact, that isn't true. Women are more likely to be the primary caregivers in a family, and increasingly, women are the primary income earners as well. Women are half the American workforce, and families depend on women's income more than ever before. Mothers are breadwinners and co-breadwinners in 40% of America's families, and this share, the highest on record, has quadrupled since 1960. Single mothers had almost a quarter of households in California with children under the age of 18, and 73% of single-parent households overall, a group that is more likely to live in poverty. Yet across the nation, women are typically paid less than their male counterparts. They're more likely to work at minimum wage jobs and low-wage jobs, and are more likely to live in poverty, having fewer opportunities to advance in their careers. The challenges of unequal pay and low wages that so many women face, especially women of color, are compounded by the additional responsibilities many mothers bear, particularly single mothers, and the issue of then working at minimum wage and having to pay for childcare for their children so that they can work at all. This is a measure that makes just common sense. And I want to close with the reference to one of the great capitalists of all time, a guy named Henry Ford. He created a car, and he recognized that if he didn't pay his workers more money to put those cars together, there'd be nobody to buy his cars. And I think as we go forward and we discuss the realities of today's society, the question really should be more, why is it that the wealthiest are getting richer and the hardworking people who are the engine that drive the visions that our great visionaries have, they can't do this alone. They have to have people to work with them. And many of those people are low-wage, minimum-wage women. And so I think if we look at the realities of this situation, by increasing what we pay people, we will lift them out of poverty, and we will also provide a streamlining engine so that people have money in their pockets so they can go out and spend it on those great ideas of the visionaries out there. We do not live in isolation. We are an integrated machine where we have those who drive the machine and those who work the machine. And that is what this bill is all about. I would urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Jackson, and I believe Senator Leyva will close.
Well, wages and workers are something that I'm passionate about, and I would argue that we have lost our way, not only in California, but in the United States. We don't value all work. We pick and choose the work that we want to value. And that's where we're at right now. This bill shouldn't even be before us. Corporations who right now have more capital than they've ever had in any time in history are not taking care of the workers who push the wages up to them. When I was in the labor movement and there were a group of workers that we represented at a pasta manufacturing plant, there was one gentleman, his name was Antonio. Antonio had been there for 20 years. Antonio caught the pasta after it was bagged and put it in a box. Antonio never missed work. He was never late for work, and he was proud of what he did. When we went in to negotiate wages, the employer never wanted to give him a raise because he said, well, it's not a skilled job. I said, what would happen if Antonio didn't come to work? The pasta would fall all over the floor. So the problem is we want to pick and choose the work that we value. All work has value, and the minimum wage going up will affect 88% of the people who would receive a wage increase right now are over the age of 20. All of you know this. If you go to any retail establishment, if you go to a fast food mart or restaurant, it's not your high school kids working there. There are people trying to support their families living on minimum wage, and it simply doesn't work. The most important part of this bill is the indexing. Just throwing out a number and increasing the minimum wage isn't what makes this bill so valuable. It's indexing it to inflation. In 1988, my husband and I got married. I was 21, he was 23. We worked for Alpha Beta grocery stores. We made $13.50 an hour. We bought a brand new house back in 1988. The house was $99,990, $100,000. So you think about now where wages are and where houses are. Average house is about $400,000. So that's 4 times what we paid. What is the average wage now? It's not $54 an hour. So workers cannot afford not only to not exist, will they ever own a home? Inflation, wages have not kept up with inflation. This is a very, very small thing that we can do to help workers. And I would argue the more money that's out there, it's our lower income workers who put money back in the economy. It is not rich people. Rich folks buy CDs and they put their money in the bank. That doesn't stimulate any economic growth. But when people who are on the lower rungs of society have a little extra money, they go to the movies, they go out to dinner, they put the money back into the community. I would also say, if you make $9 an hour and you're lucky enough to work 40 hours a week, you make $360 a week before taxes. That's $1,440 a month. Who can live on that? I can't live on that. We all got paid today, and we made significantly more than $1,440 for our month's worth of work. We are elected to represent people and make sure that they can support their families. Make sure that it's not just us who can take care of our families, but every worker who puts in an honest day's work can support their family. I would like to respond to a couple things said. Over 600 economists have signed a letter in support of the minimum wage, including 7 Nobel laureates and representatives from Stanford, Harvard, MIT, USC, Cornell, Tulane, University of Texas, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Northwestern. all believe and know that raising the minimum wage will help everyone. And as far as workers being productive, our workers are more productive right now than they have ever been in the history of the United States. And employees can always be removed. Making a livable wage doesn't mean that people are going to lose their job. An employer, unless you are represented by a union contract, can always remove an employee. And I would close with, there's a direct correlation between union membership and income inequality. When union membership is up, income inequality goes down. When union membership is down, income inequality goes up. These workers deserve to make a livable wage. $13 an hour indexed gets them closer to that. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Leyva. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Anderson? No. Bates? No. Bell? Berryhill? No. Block? Aye. Cannella? De Leon? Fuller? No. Gaines?
No.
No. Galgiani? Glazer? Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Hueso? Aye. Huff? No. Jackson? Aye. Lara? Leno? Aye. Leyva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrill? No. Wynn? No. Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Runner? No. Stone? Vidak? No. Wykowski? Aye. Wolk? Wolk aye? Bell aye?
Secretary, please call absent members.
Allen? Cannella? No. De Leon? Aye. Galgiani? Glazer? Lara? Aye. Roth? No. Stone? No. Allen aye?
Ayes 23, noes 15. Measure passes. Next item is file item 146. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 694 by Senator Leno, an act relating to evidence.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, we have, in a bipartisan fashion in recent years, accomplished some significant work that addresses the very real issue of wrongful convictions. This is when the state of California victimizes an innocent person and puts that person behind bars. Innocent people get convicted. What this bill will do is bring California in line with 39 other states and their standard with regard to post-conviction habeas corpus claims that are based upon newly discovered evidence. This is evidence that was not known at the time of the conviction. And what they would have to do in presenting this new evidence with the new standard this bill presents is to raise a reasonable probability of a different outcome if a new trial were granted. That's all the bill does. So there is no guarantee that they will have relief. There is no certainty that their conviction will be overturned. It merely allows for a court to be able to determine that a new outcome would result as a result of this new evidence. These cases are rather rare. The Northern California Innocence Project, which brings forward about half of all the habeas corpus claims in a year's time, have had about 17 cases since 2001. It's about 1 or 2 a year. So you will not see any floodgates open. This is not going to cause any great challenge to our finances or to the court system. But when an innocent person has new evidence not known at the time of conviction, Should we, this is the question before us, should we give them a chance in a new hearing to have that evidence aired? What downside is there to allow for greater justice in these circumstances? I ask for your aye vote.
Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I know it's getting late, but I have to rise to oppose this bill. California already allows a standalone claim for newly discovered evidence. California affords relief even when the defendant received a fair, error-free trial. That is why the standard is so high for this standalone relief. The defendant received a fair trial but gets a new one anyway because the new evidence points unerringly to innocence, such as DNA evidence. SB 694 unfortunately goes too far. It states the defendant need only to show that new evidence raises a reasonable possibility or probability that a different outcome if a new trial were granted. This would appear to be a low standard that require many retrials years later, despite having an excellent defense and a fair trial based on factors at the time of conviction. This could have a devastating financial effect on counties, with public defenders, with district attorneys. And while I agree with the author that wrongfully convicted defendants have every right to prove their innocence on an appeal, I feel that this bill goes in a wrong direction that I'm not comfortable with. I strongly urge a no vote.
Any other discussion or debate? Senator Leno, please close.
Just very briefly, I have to ask colleagues, do we see the 39 other states that use the standard that I've already shared with you rushing to drop it because they have such floods of new cases being asked to be retried? Of course not. Currently, we have different standards for different habeas corpus claims. If you have a case where you make the claim that you had bad counsel, that you have one standard to meet. But if you have new evidence, you have a higher standard to meet. We're just trying to make it consistent across the board, bring California in line with the 39 other states. And, you know, when we did allow for DNA to be brought into a courtroom after the fact of a conviction, that was a debate that we had around here some years ago. There were claims that there would be huge numbers of cases. In fact, we have seen fewer DNA exonerations in the entire history of the statute as what the opponents claimed at the time would occur on a yearly basis. It never happened. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? No. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? No. Block? Aye. Cannella? No. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? No. Gaines? No. Galgiani? Glazer? No. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Hueso? Aye. Huff? No. Jackson? Aye. Lara? Aye. Leno? Aye. Leyva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? No. Wynn? No. Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Runner? No. Stone? Vidak? No. Wachowski? Aye. Wolk? Wolk, aye.
Call the absent members.
Galgiani? Hill? Aye. Roth? No. Stone? No.
Ayes 23, no 16. The measure passes. Senator Stone, you have a measure you'd like to present, I believe?
Thank you.
Could you give us the item number, please?
I think it's 50.
Item number 50.
SB 690, yes.
Item number
File
50. Item 50.
Yes.
SB 690. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 690 by Senator Stone, an act relating to privacy.
Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. SB 690 is a simple bill that seeks to update California's outdated stalking provision. Current law prohibits a private citizen from using an electronic tracking device to determine the location or the movement of a person. However, current law has failed to keep up with the new methods of tracking an individual's movements or locations through advancements in technology. Today, there are multiple versions of malware available that allow individuals to track a victim's locations and movements by downloading applications onto a victim's smartphone, tablet, or computer. This is done mostly without the victim's consent or knowledge. SB 690 will help protect victims of stalking, domestic violence, and sexual assault from their abusers by replacing the narrow, outdated definition of electronic tracking device currently contained in Penal Code Section 637.7 with a more technologically updated definition. We've heard concerns from many businesses, many in the business sector and technology groups that we've been working very closely with. My staff and I have had numerous meetings with these groups and are committed to working with them as the bill moves, hopefully, forward. This bill passed out of Public Safety Committee unanimously. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on this bill. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Members, any debate or discussion? Seeing none. Members, any objection to using our unanimous roll call? Seeing none. Ayes 40, noes 0. Measure passes. We will now lift the call on a number of bills. We're going to start with file item 69. Secretary, please call the absent members.
De Leon. Aye. Galgiani. Glazer. Hall. Aye. Mendoza. Pan.
Ayes 21, noes 15. Measure passes. We're now going to move forward on file item 90. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Canella. Lada. Aye. Leno. Aye. Nielsen. Canella, aye.
Ayes 29.
Nielsen, no.
Ayes 29, noes 11. Measure passes. Yeah, on the urgency, measure, let's see, passes on the urgency and on the measure. Thank you. All right, file number 60. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Fuller. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Hertzberg. Huff. Jackson. Lada. Leno. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Monning. Morrell. Nielsen. No. Wykowski. Wolk.
Ayes 20, noes 9. Senator Block moves the call. Yeah, file number 48. Secretary, please call the absent members.
Canella. De Leon. Aye. Galgiani. Glazer. Hall. Hancock. Aye. Hertzberg.
Ayes 22, noes 13. Measure passes. We'll now move to the consent calendar. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 421.
Members, any objection to applying our unanimous roll call? Seeing none, ayes 40, noes 0. Measure passes. We are going to lift the call on file number 60. Secretary called absent members.
Fuller. Aye. Hall. Hertzberg. Huff. Jackson. Latta. Mendoza. Monning. Morrell. Wachowski. Wolk.
Ayes 21, noes 9, measure passes. Returning to motions and resolutions. There are floor amendments at the desk, and they will be deemed adopted. Senator De Leon, the desk is clear.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, we have, today is Monday, and we have until Thursday or Friday to dispense of 218 bills approximately. Today we took up 75, which gives us a balance of 143 bills still to take up. That is an average of 47 bills approximately for Tuesday, Wednesday, as well as Thursday. I think we can hit our target. If we don't, obviously we'll be here until Friday working the file. However, today was a good day. We took up 75 bills in total, so we have 143 bills still left. So that gives us more or less an average, again, of 47 bills for Tuesday, Wednesday, as well as Thursday. Our target to finish, colleagues, is Thursday, sometime Thursday, but on Thursday. We will reconvene tomorrow for floor session at 10 a.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator De Leon. Senator Hall, for what purpose do you rise?
Yes, for privileges of the floor.
Right.
I wanted to remind the members we're taking a picture immediately upon adjournment, and we will have a reception at Ellis for White Suit Day immediately following session this evening.
Great. Thank you, Senator Hall.
So if all the senators can please join for a quick photo right here. Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you. The Senate will be adjourned. We will reconvene Tuesday at 10 a.m. Thank you.